hear me? Oh, yes, you can. Okay. Thank you. As Katie said, my name is Shelby Pedersen. I'm the Director of Resource Development at ICAN, and I'm doing things a little bit traditionally today. I brought my boards with me to help me along. I don't have the cool technology all of you have. ICAN was founded in 1991 as an alternative to a growing gang problem that was happening in the downtown Chandler area. In 1991, a man named Henry Salinas actually was living in Chandler, noticed kids in his neighborhood getting involved in things that they should not have been getting engaged in. Things like underage substance abuse, youth gang activity, juvenile delinquency, all of those type of activities, and didn't find that productive for their future, obviously. So he started driving around in his Dodge Shadow and picking these kids up off the street, taking them to a basketball court, talking to local businesses, doing tours, anything that could get them into something productive after school. He eventually outgrew his Dodge Shadow, obviously, and moved into the gymnasium over at Willis Junior High School. And then about 5 short years later, we ended up just across the street here behind the new beautiful City Hall. So we are definitely the eyesore on that block now. But as Katie mentioned, we are working on a transition to a new facility that will open about this time next year. So we're really excited and look forward to that transition. But we've grown, since our founding in 1991, we've grown as a leading provider of prevention programs. And what that means, it simply means ICAN's not just providing after-school programs. We're providing programs that build skills in kids. The example I like to use, kids that are living in a culture of poverty, where about 80% of the kids in this community are very much under the national poverty level. 8 of 10 are living in households making less than $25,000 a year, for example. So when you have youth living in that type of culture, with those type of circumstances that they face, they oftentimes don't have the same skill set that a middle class or an upper class child would have to function normally in a school or a work environment. A really simple example is conflict management. So if you take a youth living in our neighborhood, they're going to hit a kid to manage a conflict. It's the first thing that comes to their mind. It's the only thing they know how to manage conflict with. You take a child from middle class, they're probably going to talk through that conflict and use words to negotiate a solution. You take somebody living in upper class, they're probably going to have a mediator to handle their conflict for them. So there's this different rule that exists in the 3 classes. Right, wrong, or indifferent, neither one. It's just a different way that these kids communicate and work out their issues. So that's just one example, but what we do at ICAN is provide these kids the skills they need to be able to overcome that challenge. To learn that hitting a child isn't going to get you through school. You have to learn how to manage that anger in a different way. Does that make sense? Pretty simple concept when we break it down. To give you an idea of the kind of kids that we're serving, we demonstrate this by telling you if you saw 10 kids walking down Arizona Avenue or in this community, 7 of those kids would be living in extreme poverty, and that statistic has actually changed significantly over the past year. It's about 80% of kids now, so 8 out of 10 would be living in households making less than $25,000 a year, of which, do you have a question?
Sorry, is that in Chandler or is that a certain part of Chandler?
It's this, they're calling it the middle to low income area of Chandler, and it's approximately a 4-mile square radius around this downtown hub. So it's like Ray to Pecos and McQueen to Alma School. So yeah, great question. 4 of 10 will go to bed hungry tonight, just based on the poverty needs in the community. 8 of 10 will be using drugs or alcohol to cope with the harsh realities of their streets. 4 will not graduate high school or achieve their GED. And then 2 will be gang affiliated by the age of 12. And I'm not talking about our Los Angeles gangs. I'm talking about youth-led gangs that are making their living off of substance abuse and juvenile delinquency. So while it doesn't seem like these are highly violent gangs, they're definitely detrimental to a youth's ability to grow and foster success in their lives. It might also surprise you that the City of Chandler Police Department has identified that Chandler, this low to moderate area, has 9 rival gangs active in it. I lived in Chandler almost my whole life, and before I worked at ICAN, I had no idea that there was a gang issue here. So it's a safe community for people living here, but for our kids that live in this smaller subset of Chandler, it's not. It's hard. They're living with a significant poverty challenge that's just magnified when you add malnutrition, when you add substance abuse issues and gang pressure to these kids. So on a happier note, what we do at ICAN is we provide programs for these kids to overcome those challenges. We do that through daily homework help and academic assistance. Most of these kids are living in single-parent families. A lot of times mom and dad don't speak English, so there's a lot of need for that one-on-one homework help after school. We provide that. We also do academic assistance, so making sure that children have the opportunity to practice their math skills, their science skills, reading, writing. Something as simple as doing their math homework is tremendously frightening for a child. I'm sure you all remember that from junior high, high school. Our kids are failing math in most cases. So we provide a program to be able to give them that one-on-one help with an engineer who's specialized in math so that they have that support. We also provide a daily nutritious snack and lunch, knowing that these kids, that may be their last meal of the day. Many of our kids qualify for free or reduced school lunch, so we pair that free lunch with a free snack in the afternoon so that they leave with their bellies full. I've neglected to mention thus far, but everything we provide to these kids is actually free of charge, knowing that they couldn't pay even nominal entrance fee. We also provide social and leadership development, giving youth an opportunity to build the leadership skills they need, doing community service projects, giving back to their community. Our teens are actually doing something very unique. They're working with Kovac Metal Roofing on Price Corridor. You guys familiar with Kovac? They actually gave us a plot of land, and the kids are growing pumpkins and watermelons. So while that seems like a simple thing, they have done so much work. They've planted the harvest, they've weeded the harvest, which is a lot of work. And they've done the whole cultivation, everything from planting to picking, and then the execution of selling those watermelons to support their program and donating about half of them to Chandler Christian Community Center, which is a local food bank. So it's a great leadership opportunity for our kids to learn, how to build a project, how to successfully complete that project, and then give back to your community in a meaningful way. We also do health and fitness programs. Arizona has the 4th largest rate of childhood obesity in the nation, so that's a huge issue, particularly among minority populations. So we focus on health and nutrition, teaching kids about the food pyramid, what does it look like to eat a healthy meal, and then also giving them opportunities to run and play outside. If you've driven around this area of Chandler, there aren't many safe parks, and the parks that they do have are oftentimes the hot spot for that substance abuse activity. So we provide that safe place for kids to run and be kids after school. We also do a job skills development program. We offer our teens actually an opportunity to work at ICAN and earn a paycheck so that they're not forced with the decision at 15, 16 years old of saying, I need to provide for my family, I have to drop out of school in order to do that by getting a job. So instead of having that child make that choice, we give them an option to work at ICAN, gain some job skills, put some great stuff on their resume, but also be able to bring home money to support the family. And then over here on the right-hand side, all of our programs have a substance abuse and gang prevention component built into them. So we are teaching kids about the gang problems in Chandler. We're teaching them how do you avoid falling into that? What confidence level do you need to have, and how do you build that confidence level? Sitting down with kids in a small group setting, talking about the issues they're facing. A whole different variety of activities that we do to help them understand that these are not the right choices for a productive future. We also involve mom and dad, knowing that if kids are going to be learning these new skills and they go home and the message is completely different in the home, we have to involve mom and dad in order for it to be a comprehensive change. So we have parenting programs that we deliver twice a week after school, both in English and in Spanish to meet the needs of our population. And we do those specifically to build the skills in parents too, because we have to parent the way we were parented. So if we're not doing that great of a job, our children are probably not going to be doing that great of a job when they have their own children, and it just continues that cycle. And then the last thing, we actually founded a coalition about 6 years ago to address the underage substance abuse issue in the community with merchants and adults in our city. It's called the Chandler Coalition on Youth Substance Abuse. It meets monthly over at the police department. And this is our community effort. So in addition to serving youth, the family, we're also combining our efforts and talking to the community. So these kids have a safer, more drug-free community to exist in. We have representatives from the police department. Sherry Kyler, our chief of police, sits on that coalition. The fire chief sits on this coalition. Several representatives from healthcare, school district, and our kids, most importantly, our kids and parents serve on this coalition. And they do some really unique stuff. I'll give you an example. 2 Fridays from now, I'll be going out with a gang detective from the Chandler Police Department. I'll be in the back of a squad car with a team from ICAN who's been trained in a program called shoulder tapping. All this child will do is he'll walk into or walk outside one of the local merchants that sells alcohol, and he'll tap an adult on the shoulder and ask them to buy him alcohol. Based on that adult's response, that youth will then educate them about the decision they've made. Hopefully that adult says, no, I'm not buying you alcohol. And if they do, they get a green flyer that says, thank you for respecting my health and the health of our community. If he says no, if he says yes, I'll buy you and give me your 20, we're going to hand him a red flyer, and it's going to explain all of the legal consequences of having done that, and then all of the health consequences to a youth. Now, this isn't enforcement-based, it's education-based, so we don't do any arresting or anything, and Chandler PD's right there ready to talk to those people as well. But it's absolutely an amazing program for our kids because they get to interface with the community and actually teach adults how to be responsible with alcohol. Another one of the projects we do is a simple hub project. It's covert underage buying, and we do that with the Liquor License and Control Board. And we send a child in, have them buy alcohol, bring it back out with, and by a child, a teen, it would be 16 to 18 years old. They bring it back out, put it on an undercover police department's car, and the merchant's either cited or not, depending on the decision they've made. And to bring that full circle, we do merchant trainings as well at ICAN, so that a merchant that hasn't done their end of the legal deal there can come to ICAN and get that full carding procedure and training, so that next time they do it right. Questions about that? Yeah.
Certain programs, how do you make sure that these programs are disseminated to the target population?
Are what?
Are disseminated to the target.
Oh, that reach the right kids. Is that what you're asking? We do a lot of work with the Chandler School District and the Chandler Police Department to make sure we're reaching the right kids. And we're serving 98% of the kids that we're serving are from this area, which tells us that we are serving the right population. But to back up a moment, we actually do a needs assessment on an annual basis to understand what the needs are as the first step. And then we work with the schools and the police department to get the kids into the program. So rather, a kid that's been pulled over, for example, and has marijuana on him, rather than putting him in jail, which is likely going to further that problem, they'll bring them to obviously to the police department and process it, but then bring them to ICAN a couple of weeks later and introduce them to a substance abuse program that allows them to get the skills and the tools they need to avoid that in the future. And that's specific to teens. A lot of times the younger kids come to us through community referrals. And that's what we prefer, to get a 5-year-old and have them go through our program until they're 18, graduate out. And so they built, several years worth of skills versus a 15-year-old coming into us when they're already having those challenges. Does that make sense?
So you mentioned that some of your kids come from police referrals. What's the onboarding process? Is there like an application, or it's pretty much just like, is there a interview process or anything? Like, is anyone ever turned away, or is it more of just like, I'm just kind of curious what that's like?
Great question. We do have an application process. It's very simple. It's basically capturing the emergency contact information and the needed biological information that we need on children, and that's our only entrance requirement. The other is that you have to be a kid, obviously, so 5 to 18 years old. We do make referrals very rarely, so we'll take almost any child. If we find a child that needs specific help, so they're already struggling with substance abuse, for example, they're addicted to something, that's not something we're prepared to address as a prevention institute. We would then refer that to an organization that does work with substance abusers. If we have a child that's autistic, that's another incident where we refer it because it's not part of our scope of work to do that. But we very rarely turn away kids. The mission of our organization is to be that free, equal access program. A lot of our kids, candidly, have been kicked out of other youth centers because they do get in fights. They don't know how to manage their conflict. They don't know how to speak respectfully when they're 5 or 6 years old because no one's taught them the way that would happen in a middle-class institution like a school. So we are in some cases a last resort for kids. So we try everything we can before we refer a kid or end services, terminate services with any child. We very rarely have to do that. Usually the kids make their own turnaround through the program. So, great questions.
I'm probably getting way ahead of myself.
No,
but I'm
you're
just kind of
fine.
curious, because we're a nonprofit as well, and we have a lot of programs and services. So you guys have a very full breadth of services, and you're talking about that you do referrals. Is there ever that temptation to add something to
Oh,
your program?
absolutely.
And then when you do have that temptation, how do you address that as an organization to say, no, we can't cover that, there's other people that do that,
Right.
or absolutely that's a need we need to meet? Like, how do you assess that?
That is really difficult, but something we're very careful with. So, for example, this year in our community needs assessment, teen pregnancy came up as a huge issue. It's skyrocketed over the last 2 years in this community. It's hard for us to say, oh my goodness, that's a need. We need to have a teen pregnancy program at ICAN. That's not our core focus. If we did that, we'd be spreading ourselves pretty thin. So when we found that need, we started looking for partners who we could refer our teenage girls to and our teenage boys to be able to educate them about the teen pregnancy and prevention. So we've built 2 or 3 specific partnerships for teen pregnancy so that we can help meet that need indirectly, not through our service. What we find happens with a lot of nonprofits is you do stretch yourself too thin because you try to be too many things for that one child. We recognize we can't do that. We have to be good at what we're good at and then let other organizations that do their jobs meet the other needs. So it says it on another one of the slides, but we have over 150 program partners that help us do just that. So, great question. Others? No? Okay. So I want to give you guys an overview of the building. So again, I know I mentioned earlier that we are transitioning. We need a new facility for 2 main reasons. The city of Chandler has obviously done a lot of redevelopment in this area. The brand new city hall, which is absolutely beautiful, sits in our front door. There's traffic in and out of there all the time. There's really nowhere land-wise for us to expand on our current facility. The other piece of that is the city of Chandler has a long-term plan for the spot of land that we actually sit on. So they've been helping facilitate this move as well. The other piece is that we've had a 260% increase in our youth daily attendance since 2006. So we're growing. We cannot stay in the little building that we're in. If you're interested in coming and seeing our facility, kids are there from about 3 to 6. I'd encourage you to come by. It's alive with activity. But I'd be happy to give you a tour. My colleague Isaac would be happy to give you a tour. Just stop on by anytime. But the new facility, it is located on Foley Park. It will break ground September 1st. We're working with the city of Chandler, like I said, so it's currently a grass area on Foley Park. We're actually doing a land exchange agreement with the city of Chandler with the current facility. There's a cash difference in ICAN's favor of $1.15 million that'll come to us to help finance the new building. So that's a great perk there too. The new building will be 21,000 square feet versus the 6,000 that we're working with now. So it'll allow for tremendous growth. After the presentation, you're welcome to come and take a closer look because I realize you're kind of far away. But this is a rendering of the new building, the layout of the land, and then some of the architectural elements that will be included. Oh, absolutely. But the total cost of the project is $5.6 million, less the city's commitment. Our fundraising goal is about $4.5. We're about 66% of the way there. We actually received a $100,000 grant from the Sons Charities earlier this week. We were really excited to be their Playmaker Award recipient this year, which is tremendous. We're very excited about that. They're sponsoring our basketball court, surprisingly, in the new facility. So we have a lot of funders like that who are coming to the table to help provide different construction features depending on their interest. Yeah.
How is the organization, not just this project, but the operation funded? Are your donors primarily other nonprofit organizations, or are they corporations?
That's another great question. We're about 49% funded by grants, both government grants and foundation corporate grants. The other half of the budget is made up from individual corporate contributions, so people just like you who would give a gift to the organization, or a business giving a gift to the organization. Most of the individual corporate gifts come through either an event or just a check that's given to the organization. So we are doing a lot of work to continue building that second half of the budget, so making the the pie larger of total givers, but specifically in that individual giving category because it's much more stable. As you can imagine, government grants, they go away, they change, they fluctuate. So to be a sustainable organization, you want to make sure you have a really large pool of individual contributors. So that's definitely one of our strategic priorities, and we've continued to grow that area over the years. Great question. Any others? This is a floor plan, and again, very small, so you can come up and check it out when I'm done. But some of the key components of the new building that we are lacking in our current facility, we'll have a central courtyard with a youth playground and a basketball court. So our courtyard right now is pretty much all basketball court. We have a very small, you could hardly call it grass. It's almost a dirt lot, so it's not functional for an after-school program. The next piece is a learning center and computer lab. We'll have over 30 computer stations for kids to do academics work on, homework help, all kinds of the technology needs they have. We'll have a half gym and fitness room, a library, 5 classroom spaces versus 2 in our facility now. A full kitchen, a dedicated teen center, and a children's sick room. One of the things that our supporters are always really surprised by when there's a sick child at ICAN, they go and sit in my office or they sit in our CEO's office, in a little wooden back chair, and they're uncomfortable, and they're, sometimes crying, and they have a little glass of water. That's not where you went in school. If you think back, you sat on a cot and you waited in the nurse's office until mom could come and get you. So this was really important to us to have a special place for kids to go when they were hurt or when they didn't feel well, when they have a headache, so that they can heal and not have to, be sitting in an office with a meeting happening at the same time. So. Any questions about the relocation? No? Then my last piece that I'll share with you, I get the question, how are you different than other youth centers almost every day? How are you different than a Boys and Girls Club? How are you different from a Big Brothers, Big Sisters, or a YMCA? We partner very strongly with all of those organizations, but we do something very, very different. The first reason we're different is we're offering a research-based program. Our programs are measurable by outcomes at the end of the year. So when somebody makes an investment in ICAN, I can then turn around and say, you created a 15% increase in this child's decision-making skills this year. So it's not a fun place for kids to go after school. It's more than that. It's an outcome that we're providing to our community, being accountable to changing the dynamic that exists for these kids. We're also free. There's no other youth center in the Chandler area or East Valley that we're aware of to this point that provides every service, transportation included, completely free of charge to their kids and the families. We're also comprehensive because we work with families and we work with the community. There's no other youth center doing that, and to the extent that we're doing it. We're also nationally accredited, so we are a free nonprofit for youth and families, but we're certainly not the lesser quality. We meet over 400 standards of excellence in governance, administration, fundraising, and most importantly, programs to be able to say we are providing something quality, and here's the accreditation to prove it. Like I mentioned, we're evaluated annually, so we do have a national evaluator who's a third party. She doesn't work for ICAN. She comes in, she measures the impact of our programs, and reports out to us. That information allows us to then go back to the drawing board and say, wow, this program's really working well. We're making great progress with these kids. This one's mediocre. What can we do better here? So that evaluation helps us to continually strengthen our programs. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, we have over 150 program collaborators that allow us to meet the full needs of a child without having to do that in our center. So whether it's a food box or providing a pregnant teen with a resource for information, we do provide lots and lots of referrals for kids. Yeah.
So can you tell us a story about one of the kids or some of the successes that you've seen come out of the program?
I would love to. I actually have a really good story. They're all really good. But we have a young man that actually works at ICAN now. His name's Jonathan. You're welcome to come over and meet him. He's one of our famous teens because he got interviewed by radio and TV a couple of weeks ago, so he's famous now. But anyhow, he's been coming to ICAN since he was about 6 years old. He's been with us the whole time, comes every single day. When he was 16, he started falling off a little bit. We didn't see him coming as frequently. He's now 20, so this was probably about 4 or 5 years ago for him. And we reached out to him. We go out with the Chandler Police Department, like I mentioned, and we outreach to kids every single month. So I'll hop in the back of a cruiser and go talk to kids in the community just to get them interested in the program. But one night when we were out doing that, the officer had pulled over 2 kids in a car, and Jonathan got out of the driver's side car, and our CEO at the time actually got out, and they locked eyes, and he had that oh crap face. He was actually more worried that our CEO found him than the police officer. It was really funny. There was that accountability there that we were surprised at. But the police officer looked around and said, "Do you guys know each other?" And our CEO, Christy, at the time said, "Yeah, he's an ICAN kid. He just hasn't been around very often. We've been trying to reach him." And Jonathan had a little bit of substance on him that evening. He was driving a car at 15, shouldn't have been doing that. So the officer gave him an option. He said, and his cousin was with him as well. He said, you can go to ICAN on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and keep going. I'm going to check, by the way. I'm going to call Christy and I'm going to ask her if you're there. Or I can book you. Make the choice. I'm going to come on Monday. If you're not at ICAN, I'm going to come find you. So Jonathan made a choice. He came to ICAN on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and every day since. He's been a very regular member ever since that day. His cousin didn't. His cousin chose not to come. He blew the officer off. Actually ran away because he was afraid the officer was going to come find him. But Jonathan happily just finished his finishing his second semester of college right now. He's working at ICAN. He's one of 8 members in his family living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and he's working with us to bring home a paycheck and getting A's and B's in college. So we're really proud of him. One of our supporters was actually so moved by his personal story that they funded his education. Because as you can imagine, he would not have been that would not have been a door he could open based on needing to provide for 6 or 7 younger siblings. His cousin, unfortunately, about 2 weeks after the police officer had found them, was arrested in a gang shooting, as being involved in a gang shooting, and is still in jail. So just a demonstration of the fact that there is an alternative. A lot of times these kids don't see it. It's not readily available or something that they can see. But when you give these kids an opportunity and you give them a door to walk through, they usually do. It's really an easy choice for them to make if they have a strong support system behind them, pushing them along. So Jonathan's a great example. I'd love to introduce you guys to him if you want to come by to the facility. So.
And then, go ahead.
So you got Jonathan when he was 6.
Yes.
Which is very early.
And that's the ideal circumstance.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
about. So since you guys are out and facing to sort of measure these kinds of things, is there a sweet spot of ages? Is there a point where, effectiveness kind of drops off?
Yeah, it's preteens. On one of the prior slides, I mentioned that youth are susceptible for gang involvement as young as 12. So when you're entering that 11, 12, 13-year age range in this community, you're being pulled in so many different directions to get involved in gangs, to start using substances. There's a lot of pressure in the community for those activities. So the junior high level, we actually, as you can imagine, most kids at that age don't want to come to a youth center. It has a certain stigma about it. It's not cool to hang out with 5-year-olds. But we do a lot of work. We actually provide our programming in junior highs and high schools to reach that population, knowing that they likely won't come to an after-school center. So we're still providing, but it's less effective if you get somebody that's 13, 14 and already falling into those patterns than it is to find a 5-year-old and just coach them through their young lives to be able to make good decisions the whole time. It's not undoable. We've done it several times. Jonathan's a good example of a kid who came in with a foundation from ICAN and was able to get back on track. And there's many other teens that we've been able to get back on track through our programs. But it's definitely more challenging. We prefer that you started the prevention process as young as that 5-year-old and worked up from there. So
Volunteer opportunities?
we have tons of volunteer opportunities. On a daily basis, we have 130 to 150 kids in our facility. So you can come work with the kids. And if you don't like working with kids, there are plenty of administrative or maintenance or technology needs that we have for volunteers as well. Special event volunteers, we need people to come in and help facilitate special events. Drives, doing clothing drives for kids, food drives for families, book drives, school supply drives, board membership or committee membership if you wanted to help do governance work with ICAN, set policy. Our board of directors is always recruiting new people to come in. And then lastly, any type of volunteer activity that you can think of. So we have somebody who's doing a dance program with our kids now, and that's something that, somebody comes in with an expertise and can provide that in one of our recreational programs. We love that, because because it mixes it up for the kids rather than always having to do the same things that our program staff know how to do. But having a yoga instructor come in and teach yoga during our health and fitness program or a dance program or whatever it is. So any special skill you have, we can usually put to use in our programs. So,
Any additional questions, guys?
oh yeah. Yeah, teens 15 and older can volunteer in the program. If they're younger than 15, they need a parent or guardian based on their age
There's
also.
a lot of schools who are requiring students.
Yeah.
Are you the 50?
Yep. Yeah, we're a 501c3. Yep. We take, like I said, 5 to 15, starting at 15, and that's for obvious reasons. You won't want an 8-year-old volunteering with other 8-year-olds. But they're welcome to come in. We have a lot of really great high school students who do a lot of good things for our kids. So.
Other questions? No. All right, thank you, Shelby.
Thank you.
So actually, you can come stand up there. We have a gift for you.
Oh,
A little bit of a
thank
surprise.
you.
This is Charmaine, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what we're handing you right now.
Cool.
Hi everyone. I'm Charmaine Surratt.
Shelby, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I wanted to present this check to you. I participated in Gangplank's fat loss contest and won.
Oh, congratulations.
And I heard about your vision and what you were doing with, the youth and community, and I wanted to contribute.
Thank you. Thank you. That's amazing.